Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over some thunderstorm activity which is going to be taking place in the central United States over the next couple of days. We're also going to be covering some snowy weather for the west with that big snowstorm. There's already some areas that have reported up to 10 inches of snow in Montana, and that snow is still coming down over those areas. So we're going to be recapping the snow event in the beginning of the video, and then towards the end of today's video we'll talk more about the thunderstorm activity. So let's get right into it, and let's start off with your current National Weather Service page. As you can see, we have a bunch of wind advisories, high wind warnings, and even some blowing dust advisories throughout the southwest. That's being created by this upper trough which is in the western United States. That's what's bringing all of the snow for the Rockies, but it's also creating a tight pressure gradient around the southwest. So that is providing the basis for a little bit of wind to be generated up there. We have some red flag warnings in effect for some parts of California, as well as for southeastern Colorado. We have freeze watches up in that light blue color for a little bit of western Colorado, as well as southeastern Arizona. And then we have frost advisories up for a little bit of Washington and Oregon. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that actually does go up into Seattle. I think it might also go into Portland. So either way, it looks like some of these lower elevation spots are now getting in on the colder temperatures. We have some freeze warnings in that darker blue or almost a purple color in parts of Nevada, California, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And then we have some winter storm watches up for a little bit of Utah, Wyoming, and South Dakota. We have winter storm warnings up for some parts of Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and southwestern Colorado, as well as winter weather advisories in that deeper purple shade for parts of Nevada, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana. We have some tornado watches up for Illinois and Indiana, as well as a flood watch up for parts of New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia as well. So that kind of recaps it in terms of all the watches and warnings. There's quite a lot going on in the west, not so much in the east, but we do of course have those severe thunderstorms in the central plains. Yesterday we had a high temperature of 106 degrees in Rio Grande Village, Texas. The low temperature was 10 in Bodie State Park, California. The highest rainfall report was in Millbank, South Dakota, which is in the northeastern part of the state, and there were no snowfall reports yesterday. So of course all of these are for yesterday. So the high temperature yesterday was 106. The low temperature yesterday was 10 degrees. This means that we've already seen some snowfall reports come in, but they've been from this morning, so it's not going to show up until tomorrow's video. I've gotten a lot of people questioning why some snowfall reports haven't been showing up. One reason is because you actually need somebody to go up to there and get the snowfall report. You'll see a lot of estimated snowfall maps, and so people will say, well, on this map it shows that one high mountaintop got 3 inches of snow. How come that's not showing up on the snowfall reports? And the reason is because NOAA doesn't include that in their database unless they have a storm spotter or somebody from the public go up there and get that snowfall report. So we have now low elevation snow reports, so it has to be an area that somebody can get to for them to get a snowfall report. You're not going to be able to get a snow report from a 14,000 foot elevation unless you have some sort of base up there, but you will be able to get them down from the surface. So we have had some snowfall reports from populated areas such as Big Sky, Montana, where they've gotten 10 or 11 or 12 inches of snow. So you're going to see that pop up tomorrow. So that's been a question that a lot of people have been asking, so I just wanted to kind of clear that up with you guys. If we go over to the current satellite imagery, you can see that we do have some of that rain and snow popping up. Now, you will not see any of that show up over here, but there is precipitation going on. And the reason is because the radar sites, I believe there's one from Pocatello in eastern Idaho. I believe there might be one from Jackson. And if I'm not mistaken, there's either one from Billings or Bozeman, or there could actually be from both. So there's a few radar sites within this area, and it's at that elevation. So of course the radar site actually goes up maybe a few hundred feet higher but it's not going to really be able to catch some of the precipitation that's going on in the mountains because it's going to get blocked. So that imagery is not going to be shown because it's getting blocked by the mountain. Kind of think of it as if you're pointing a ray at something, and you kind of have this big wall blocking it, and that would be, of course, the mountains. So you're not going to be able to really see snow from the mountains being picked up here, but just know that this area is definitely seeing some precipitation at this point. It's just not being picked up. Billings, Montana, you guys are actually dealing with a little bit of snow, especially in the suburban areas, but in the city itself, maybe a little bit more of a rainy mix. Jackson, Wyoming, you're still in the rain zone, although that is going to be switching over to snow very shortly. And then some of these areas around Yellowstone, you guys will probably already be in that snow zone. Twin Falls, Pocatello, both of you guys are going to be on the edge of some snow. If it looks like as you get a little bit higher in elevation by just a couple hundred feet, you could be in the snow area, but for the valley areas itself, it looks like you'll stay, for the most part, in the rain. For northern Nevada, you guys are dealing with scattered flurries in and around that area, but nothing that's really too definitive. They've already seen a few inches pile up there, or actually more like a couple inches. Nothing that's been too staggering, but you have seen a little bit drop over there. If we look at the 48-hour snowfall analysis, you can see that we definitely did see quite a bit in these areas, and this is from 5 a.m. Pacific time, so this does not include anything that happened over this entire region. So this area still has not had those snowfall reports in, but we can already see that before then. We already had a few 6-inch plus reports. We did see a little bit of a band of snow in the higher elevation regions, the higher plateaus of northern Nevada and southern Idaho, as well as for the mountains in central Idaho and southwestern Montana. And those areas are going to continue to see some snow. The Cascades also saw some snow over the past 48 hours. It looked like if you did drive through I-5, it was a pretty nice drive. You got to see a little bit of snow on the mountains, but otherwise it was mainly just rain. But if you were to go for more of an interior route, if you're driving a little bit further inland into the mountain west, you might want to take a few precautions because you might run into some issues depending on where you're going. If you're going along I-90 or I-80, you might run into a few issues, especially as you go through some of those mountain passes. So just watch out. Try and plan your drive safely if you're going to be driving in and around the Rockies. And also, even if you live in the flatter areas of eastern Wyoming and eastern Montana, you guys will also be dealing with some snowfall. Here's the projected snowfall, and you can see that we're dealing with a ton of expected snow. Now, not all of this is going to stick, but you're looking at, from the NAM model, over the next about 48 to 60 hours, we're looking at about 10 to 25 inches in much of southeastern Montana and northern Wyoming, as well as the western outskirts of the Dakotas as well. So these areas, once you get basically past this line, it's actually fairly flat throughout Wyoming, Montana, and of course into South Dakota and North Dakota, with the exception of the Black Hills right over here. But with that exception, that entire area is actually fairly flat. You do have some rolling hills, but nothing that's super high in elevation, but you will still be dealing with a quite decent amount of snowfall. If we're looking at the amount that's actually going to stick to the roads, you're probably looking at half of this amount. So if you're looking at 10 inches on the screen for your particular area, probably you're going to deal with 5 inches that actually sticks to the road. Maybe 8 or 9 of those inches sticks onto the grassy surfaces. So something interesting, this is not just going to be a high elevation snowfall. I know a lot of people just kind of pass over this part of the country because most of the viewers, for some reason, happen to be in the eastern United States, and most of my viewers are also in the eastern U.S., but I do want to cover those of you out in the west because you guys, of course, still deal with the weather events, even though you don't get as much coverage from YouTube or from the news. So just want to kind of give that little update for you guys in the west. You'll be dealing with a bit of snow over the next 48 hours. Let's talk about the severe weather now. For today, we're not going to cover this system too much. We're going to talk about the next one for tomorrow. But briefly, we have a slight risk up as of when I'm recording this in Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Michigan. We have a 5% risk of tornadoes in northern Illinois as of right now. So there is a threat of some tornadoes, although I don't think it's going to be too widespread as of right now. If we look at the wind outlook, you're looking at about 10 to 15% chance of wind damage. Hail, probably not too likely for today. If we look at the day 2 outlook, this is what we're going to be focusing on. You can see that we have a slight risk up for a little bit of Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, as well as an enhanced risk for much of central Kansas, western Oklahoma, and a little bit of the panhandle of Texas. We have a 5% risk of tornadoes in that brown color for the central plains, and we do have a 30% chance of wind damage as well. So those are going to be some big threats from these storms coming in tomorrow. Here would be the simulated radar from the NAM model, and we're going to quickly go through this. So you have that system bringing all the snow and rain and mess to the northwest and the midwest, and that's all the way up into Colorado, Wyoming, and Nebraska, kind of in that triple intersection right there where you have those state borders come together, and that's going to be climbing up to the northeast. But as it does so, it will bring up quite a bit of moisture, and ahead of this as well, it's going to be generating energy. It's a very deep low pressure system, 994 millibars, which if you were to put that out in the Atlantic, it might even be classified as a tropical storm. So you're dealing with a fairly strong system able to generate winds along the southwest, and that big area of updraft is going to allow this system to really strengthen and provide a bit of severe weather ahead of it. So this would be for tomorrow night. This would be around 6 or 7 o'clock central, and you're dealing with some of those thunderstorms around western Kansas and western Nebraska. Now, by this point, they're still not too strong. You're starting to see a little bit more organization as we get to about 9, 10, or 11 o'clock tomorrow night. And you can see that we still don't have anything that's awfully severe, but you are dealing with a little bit of thunder and lightning, most likely out of a few of these storms. This will be one of those type of events that could produce a couple of tornadoes, and that's because based on what we're seeing on the radar, we do have a little bit more of a spread out type of system. We don't have a singular line of storms that's providing all of the thunderstorm activity. It's kind of broken up batches and lines and waves of severe thunderstorms, and that's more conducive for seeing some tornadoes. So that's something that you want to watch out for. By the way, something that you can always look at if you're looking at the simulated radar, notice the front band. That's usually your wind front. So usually your wind gusts are going to be heaviest or strongest right along this edge of precipitation, and then behind it, that's when you get into the stronger storms. That's a signal that you have a fairly well developed system and storm event when you have that leading wave of wind, which usually you would see the wave come in probably 2 or 3 minutes before the storm, and then you'll start to hear the hail or the rain start to come down on your roof. So that's when you'll start to hear the rain. Usually a lot of people notice that a few minutes before you'll actually get the wind to start up, and then you'll eventually deal with the actual severe thunderstorm in the form of rain and hail and whatever would come from that thunderstorm. We have 2 lines of storms. We have one into central Kansas and then one right ahead of there into western Oklahoma and central Oklahoma as well. So 2 different lines. We're dealing with the back line, I guess you could say, the one that's further to the west, being stronger to the south, and then this frontal line is a little bit ahead of it, but it's also further north. So both areas, basically from northern Kansas to southern Oklahoma, will be getting in on some of the thunderstorm action, whether you get hit hardest with the first wave or by that second wave. It looks like most areas will get hit by either one of them. If we move this on to Wednesday morning, this is still very early, so we're looking at about 2 or 3 a.m., and you're dealing with that storm moving in through northern Texas, central Oklahoma, and eastern Kansas, but as a much weaker system. You still do have some severe storms in southern Oklahoma and northern Texas. By this point, it's about to move into Dallas. This would be by around 7 o'clock in the morning, so might make the morning commute a little bit hard when you're going to work or to school. And that line of storms to the north kind kind of broke up, so you don't have as much going into Missouri at this point, but that line of storms is still holding up down in Oklahoma and Texas. Moving this on, you can see that it does weaken as we get to around 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. Central Time. And then eventually that would pretty much break up. It would just become rain after that, a plain rain. Now, when you look at the actual parameters, we don't see a lot pop up. And this is going to be a little bit confusing for many when you just look at some of these standard things that you look at. For example, the CAPE, the convective available potential energy. Well, when you look at it during the peak, you're dealing with maybe 100 to 500 in a lot of these spots. You have a small area of 500 to 1,000, which typically would not spawn up a really big storm. If we look at the temperatures, the actual high temperatures for that day, you're into the 70s, which is good enough, but it's nothing spectacular or nothing crazy. And when you look at the dew points as well, these really aren't too impressive. They're about 60 to about 70. So we're not dealing with anything crazy in that form, but normally this would not cause anything. But you do have to realize that we have this big trough that's digging into the western United States because of that snowstorm. So this is going to cause those upper level winds to steer out from the southwest. You have a big jet coming out of the southwest, and this overlay with wind shear over the central plains will allow for some of these storms to fire up, even with less so than they would typically have. So you have that center of your storm right here by this point. You have all that snow to the northwest. You have a bit of rain into the northern plains, and then you have a lot of wind which is taking place especially for the southwest down there. So you have the wind down here, and that's an indication of your upper level jet stream, which is streaming through the southwest, and eventually that's going to collide into the central plains, where you have a lot of moisture being pulled up from the Gulf of Mexico. So this confluence that you have over the central plains is going to allow for this severe weather to occur. This is not something that would typically happen in, let's say, the southeast during the summertime. This is one of those events that you can really only get in the fall time when you're transitioning from summer into winter, because in the summer you're not going to have as strong of systems that would be able to produce this high of wind shear, and in the winter time it would just be too cold for this to occur. So you're pretty much right in that zone where this is possible to happen. And it's definitely an interesting thing to look at. This was one system which started up in British Columbia and Washington and Oregon has now moved its way through the Rockies, moving its way into the Midwest right now, and it's bringing with it a ton of snow. We're looking at close to 20 inches in a few of these spots. It's bringing with it a lot of rain for the northern plains. We had reports of 2 to 3.5 inches of rain, which is definitely needed for those areas. Definitely no complaints from the people up there because they have needed some of that rain, and we're now also getting a couple rounds of severe weather, so there's a lot to cover in the weather as of right now. So I'm sorry if it's a little bit of a longer video. I wanted to cover, for those of you who are out in the west, I know I have quite a few viewers from especially the interior mountain west, where most of the snow actually occurs, so I want to cover it for them, and then I also want to cover for those in the central plains who want to know about the severe weather. So I wanted to kind of get to both sides of the topic. For those of you who are in the east, so pretty much from the Mississippi River on eastward, it looks like you're probably going to have to wait off until the 20th or the 25th to maybe get a couple rounds of cooler weather before maybe entering another spell of slightly warmer temperatures. We'll have to see. That's out in the long range. But if that were to happen, if we were to get a couple spells of colder air, who knows? This is the time of year when snow is definitely a possibility. It's not too likely over many areas, but it's definitely not out of the question. It's not September 20th by this point. It would already be October 20th soon. So that 1 month time frame, that's going to make a big difference. You're about 10-15 degrees cooler in most spots. So that's a big difference when you're going from an average low temperature of maybe 60 degrees to an average low of 45. So if you get even a little bit below the normal, you're already already going to be below freezing. So this is going to be an interesting couple of weeks of weather to cover. I can't wait until we get into the heart of the winter season, when we start covering some of those winter storms that are east of the Rockies. I'll also continue to cover the storms west of the Rockies as well. So again, that's going to be something that I'm looking forward to, and hopefully that you guys are as well. If you have any questions or you want a personal forecast, just leave a comment down below, and I'll be responding within a couple of hours of you posting that. And I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Goodbye.